ever in LA, Armenians protesting 100 years after the massacre of more than 1 million of their ancestors.
The crowd estimated at around 100,000.
More than 100,000 people.
The Turkish government officially denies what happened was genocide, despite repeated calls to acknowledge what historians and scholars agree was a government-sanctioned mass killing.
But the massacres that killed over 1 million Armenians would today be labeled as genocide.
Why Armenia and more genocide?
Well, I think it's important that it's the one that hasn't been acknowledged, quite honestly. It's 100 years.
Contemporaneous photographs show death marches and concentration camps where thousands of Armenians perished.
Terrible genocide in 1915, and I'm here to support the effort to get it recognized.
Il primo genocidio del XX secolo che ha colpito il vostro popolo armeno.
We are here, stronger than ever, demanding justice. Our movement will not stop until we feel the earth beneath our feet. In Van, in Bitlis, in Erzurum, and on top of Mount
100 years later, we continue to prove that we not only remember, but more importantly, we demand. Emboldened by the rumble heard around the world on April 24th, and led by the 166,000 who proudly marched through the streets of Los Angeles, today we come from a position of strength.
The events commemorating the genocide centennial prove that the community is fully engaged in marching forward for justice. Even 100 years later, it is this massive energy which motivates the ANCA to continue its dedicated work advocating the Armenian cause.
Austria and Germany, allies of the Ottoman Empire, stood up to Turkey's threats and recognized the Armenian genocide.
The cause endures.
They said, over 100 years have gone by, let the historians decide. But you know what? We did it. They said, it's not the right time. Turkey is a strategic ally. But you know what? We did it. And they tried to silence us and spent millions of dollars to hire the best lobbyists to try to convince our friends in Congress that the resolution, the Armenian genocide resolution, should never reach the congressional floor. But you know what? We did it. Today is a celebration. A celebration of our unwavering commitment, a celebration for the advancement of human rights, and a celebration of our predecessors and our ancestors who sacrificed so much for us to see this day. The historic vote on the Armenian Genocide Resolution made international headlines, literally. From the front pages of the New York Times, the LA Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the Independent, CNN, Fox, NBC, ABC, the list goes on. We were covered everywhere globally in this last 6 weeks. And we got this done. We got this done because of all of you. Is the result of a bipartisan, and I repeat, bipartisan effort, which demonstrates to the world that the Armenian cause was never and can never be a partisan issue, and that it will always, always be above partisan politics. I had the good fortune of witnessing firsthand the historic passage of House Resolution 296 on October 29 in Washington, D.C. As our ANCA team restlessly observed from the rotunda above the congressional floor in the Capitol, we could not believe the number of votes cast increasing on the monitor from 100 to 200 to 300 and finally to an overwhelming 405 votes. And though silence and decorum was expected of us in the rotunda, we couldn't help ourselves. We jumped out of our seats, yelling and applauding our friends in Congress for coming out on the right side of genocide. At which point, our friends from the bottom below, Congressman out of Schiff, Congresswoman Judy Chu, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Congresswoman Jackie Spear and Anna Eshoo, Congressman Brad Sherman, Chairman Elliot Engel, Congressman Chris Smith, and all 405 friends of ours in Congress who voted yes, stopped everything they were doing, looked up to the rotunda, and joined our applause. And I will never forget that irreconcilable feeling of excitement, fulfillment, and peace in the Capitol at that very moment. So thank you, Congressman Schiff, Congresswoman Chu, and all of our friends in Congress for helping us make history. And I'll end with this. We proved once again that we never waver, we never compromise, and we always stick
Years
together.
ago in 1987 in August, I was a sophomore in college, and my fellow AYFers said, let's go to DC. The Armenian Genocide Resolution is being debated. So I told my folks I'm going to DC for a couple of days. Those couple of days turned into 10, 12, maybe 15. And finally, at the gallery at the House of Representatives, they were taking a vote on the bill. That didn't pass by a mere 14 votes. But we had done incredible work by advocating truth to justice. Yes, we were disappointed, but we knew that the road ahead was going to be long and bumpy. So when we exited Congress on the steps of the Capitol, one of the founders and inspirations of the ANCAWR, Armand Keosian, who is no longer with us, began singing Mer Hayrenik on the steps of the Capitol. Our journey was long. Our journey is long because this is one magnificent step.
It has been, I think, almost 35 years since the House of Representatives passed a resolution recognizing the Armenian genocide. For 19 of those years, I've made it one of my top priorities to try to accomplish in the Congress, but for many of you, it has been a struggle that has gone on far longer, and against great odds. And I know at times along the way, there were many who wondered whether we would ever see this day, whether we would ever be able to overcome the enormous opposition of the Turkish lobby and the Azeri lobby, the administrations past and present, whether this was just too big a lift. But you never gave up. You never gave in. You pressed on with the most incredible grassroots effort I think the Congress has ever seen. And that effort reached fruition within the last 2 months. And I thought that I would just share with you a little bit about the behind the scenes in the Congress and why this has been so difficult and why it took so long and what the path looks like going forward. But first, let me turn to the words of the resolution that passed in the House a couple months ago. The Congress has affirmed that it is the policy of the United States to commemorate the Armenian genocide through official recognition and remembrance, to reject efforts to enlist, engage, and otherwise associate the United States government with the denial of the Armenian genocide or any other genocide, and to encourage education and public understanding of the facts of the Armenian genocide, including the United States' role in the humanitarian relief effort and the relevance of the Armenian genocide to modern-day crimes against humanity. That is the language that has now passed the House and passed the Senate. And in the House of Representatives, it passed with 405 votes, a convincing and bipartisan vote of support for recognition. And one of the reasons why this is so important that it was so bipartisan and so overwhelming is that this shouldn't be a partisan.
Hoskes Gurem Sezi Emiguyasu
strong support of H.R.S. 296, which I introduced along with Representative Bill Rackus to recognize and commemorate the Armenian genocide. This is a vote that I fought for 19 years to cast. My wonderful colleagues and Ashu, Jackie Spear have fought far longer than I have. It is one that tens of thousands of my constituents, my Armenian American constituents, have waited decades to see. It is a moment that so many have worked and struggled and prayed for, a moment when the House of Representatives refused to be enlisted in the cause of genocide denial.
I rise in strong support of this resolution, House Resolution 296, which affirms the Armenian genocide. This is an historic day in the House of Representatives, and it's one that I've been waiting for 27 years.
In the Armenian genocide. These are their names. George Tutunjian, Harutsun Minassian, Samuel Kadian, Dibran Karakashian.
April 24th, 1915 is the day that lives in infamy in the hearts and minds of millions of Armenians worldwide. It's a day that I grew up understanding from my Armenian mother to be one of the darkest in history.
Armenian women and children murdered in mass graves. Armenian There were 1.5 million Armenians killed in this genocide in 1915.
Too often, tragically, the truth of this staggering crime has been denied. Today, let us clearly state the facts.
And I'm so proud of the Armenian American community for working so hard, so diligently to make this happen. Now, I must tell you, when I am in Washington, D.C., I never miss a moment to boast about my Armenian American population in my congressional district. Incredible monument on the Armenian genocide, a very, very moving monument, an upside down triad which represents the many Armenian leaders that were hung during the genocide, with tears that are represented by drops that go out from that monument one by one, so that in a year, 1.5 million tears, finally doing the right thing. Thank you so much.
I can definitely say that for every Armenian, at least living in the United States, October 29th was that thing that we can go around and ask, what were you doing on this day at that hour? And everyone will have a uniquely personal story. I would like to ask Congressman Schiff I know what we were doing on the 29th, but after almost 20 years, how did it feel?
It was truly exhilarating, and in the weeks leading up to the vote on the House floor, we were trying actually to get the bill taken up in the Foreign Affairs Committee. Normally the bill would be taken up in the committee, and then you'd have the fight to have it taken up on the floor. We had come very close in the past. We had, from time to time over the last 2 decades, succeeded in having the bill taken up. I remember the first time it was being voted on in the last 20 years in the Foreign Affairs Committee. It was during the presidency of George W. Bush, and he was literally on the phone calling members of the committee to urge them to vote against the genocide bill. Now that is very extraordinary. You do not have a president of the United States calling people on a committee to urge them to vote against the bill, but it shows you the power of the Turkish lobby. We got it through the committee, and then as the bill was about to be taken up on the floor, I was carrying the bill that year, and we had gathered with your good work over 230 co-sponsors. You only need 218 members to pass the bill, but we had over 230. But as we got closer, as the Turkish lobby accelerated its efforts, we found members taking their name off the bill. Now that is also entirely irregular. And what it told me was that there were a number of fair weather friends of the community